In 2026, the United States government was forced to open a digital vault. What came out exposed a secret network of some of the most powerful people on the planet.
You see, this wasn't some kind of hack or a leak. No, this was different. This was the government itself, legally forced to unleash a flood of information, a story of power and secrecy that was never supposed to get out. But to really understand what was in these files, we have to go back and see how this whole thing started.
It all comes down to a story that had been building for years, a story of public outrage that just got too loud for anyone to ignore.
Okay, so let's walk through the timeline. It really kicks off back in 2008, when Epstein gets what many called a slap on the wrist. Fast forward to 2019, he dies in jail, and suddenly the questions just explode. The pressure from the public just builds and builds until, by late 2025, Congress has no choice. They pass this new law, and get this, the vote was 427 to 1. Basically, everyone agreed it was time to open the books. And in early 2026, that's exactly what happened.
And this law, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, it was a really big deal. I mean, think about it. It legally forced the Department of Justice to take every single unclassified record they had on Epstein, Maxwell, and their entire network, all the emails, the photos, the flight logs, you name it, and just dump it all onto a public website for anyone in the world to see.
And when I say dump, I'm not sure you're grasping the scale of this. This wasn't just a few files being released. It was a digital tsunami, an absolute avalanche of raw data.
Let's just put some numbers on this, okay? We're talking about nearly 3.5 million pages of documents. 3.5 million. And this wasn't just boring legal paperwork. It was everything from court transcripts to incredibly personal private emails.
On top of that, you have the images, more than 180,000 of them. And it was this really unsettling mix, you know? On one hand, you have grim official crime scene photos. And on the other, you have these glamorous shots from parties with some of the most famous people in the world.
And then there were the videos. Over 2,000 video files. A lot of it was surveillance footage from his properties, from his island, stuff that was seized from his personal devices. So when you put it all together, it's not just data. It's like this massive, disturbing digital archive of a world that was always meant to stay hidden.
But here's where it gets really messy from a technical standpoint. In the government's rush to get this all out, the release was a disaster. I mean, basic digital security just went out the window. They tried to redact names to protect victims, but the redactions were so sloppy you could literally just double-click a black bar and see the name underneath. Can you believe that? And then, files just started disappearing from the website. Poof, gone. Which of course made everyone ask, was this just incompetence, or was someone deliberately trying to hide something?
Okay, let's be honest. As massive as all that data was, the public was really looking for one thing. Names. And boy, were there names. It read like a who's who of the global elite. Now, before we go any further, it's really important to be clear about this. Just because a name is in these files does not mean that person is guilty of a crime. All it proves is some kind of association. Maybe they took a flight, maybe they exchanged an email. Every single prominent person we're about to mention has strongly denied any knowledge of or role in Epstein's crimes. So we're just going to stick to exactly what the documents themselves reveal. So we have an email here from Elon Musk to Jeffrey Epstein in 2012. It reads, "What day/night will be the wildest party on your island?" Now, Musk has publicly stated he declined the invitations, but the email itself confirms there was a direct line of communication about social events happening on Epstein's private island.
Then there was this photograph, found among Epstein's private records. It appears to show Prince Andrew on his hands and knees over another person. We don't know the context here, but its discovery added a lot of fuel to the fire of allegations against him. Allegations that he has always, and very strongly, denied.
And this next one is strange. It's an email Epstein seems to have written to himself, but drafted as if he were an employee of Bill Gates. It makes a series of unverified claims. A spokesperson for Gates shot this down immediately, calling it absurd and completely false, and suggesting it was an attempt by Epstein to create some kind of leverage or blackmail. So the names are shocking, right? But for investigators and data analysts, the individual names were just data points. The real bombshell was what happened when you put all those points together. For the first time, you could actually map the architecture of the entire network. And when they ran the analysis, a very clear picture emerged. Epstein wasn't just another rich guy on the edge of these powerful circles. No, he was the hub.
He was the central node connecting all these different worlds that don't normally mix. Politics, big finance, royalty, Silicon Valley. It was like a giant digital spiderweb, and he was sitting right there in the middle.
And this is what that web looks like when you start to break it down. Look at the categories here. You've got politics, with former presidents like Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, both documented on his flight logs. You've got British royalty with Prince Andrew, big tech with Elon Musk, Wall Street, even the co-owner of an NFL team. The data shows that the connections weren't just in one area. They span across pretty much every pillar of global power.
So as you can imagine, once all of this information hit the public, the fallout was immediate and severe. And it wasn't just in the US. This went global, and it went global fast. Just to give you a sense of how sensitive this stuff was, look at the rules that members of the US Congress had to follow just to see the fully unredacted files. They had to go to a secure room, no phones, no staff, only allowed to take handwritten notes. They were treating these files like they were state secrets, which tells you everything about how explosive the raw data really was.
And the shockwaves just kept spreading. In the UK, you had the Prime Minister on television basically telling Prince Andrew to cooperate with investigators. In Poland, they launched a task force to see if this entire network was actually a honey trap being used by Russian intelligence. And even in Norway, a former Prime Minister ended up under a corruption investigation. It just proved once and for all, this was never just an American scandal. So that brings us to the big question. The really disturbing question when you think about it. After all of this, all the data, all the names, all the headlines, what actually happened?
And the answer is pretty much nothing. 3.5 million pages of evidence, thousands of videos and photos, a detailed map of a global network. And after all of that, not one single new criminal charge has been filed against any of the powerful people named in those documents. Not one.
Which leaves us with a really uncomfortable question, doesn't it? We all demanded transparency and we got it. But if all that transparency, all that information doesn't lead to any real accountability, then what is it actually worth?
The story of these files is a warning. In a world that runs on data, the most powerful networks are often the ones that are least visible, hidden in plain sight. It makes you wonder what other secrets are buried on the servers of the powerful. If you believe this kind of investigative work is important, supporting the channel with a subscription is the best way to help us continue.